I would say there were two moments in my life that were 25 years apart, but very much intertwined in my decision to run. Growing up, my family struggled with housing insecurity and food insecurity, and at times we were without a house. We were homeless, and before I knew that, before I realized that we technically qualified as homeless, I was about 5 years old, driving in a car in downtown Des Moines with my mom, and I saw a man sitting on the street with his dog, and it was a very hot day, and I remember asking my mom, "It's hot out, why is that guy hanging out on the street, shouldn't he be at home?" And my mom explained to me in the kindest words she could find in the moment, which was, well, he has nowhere to go and no one to help him. And I remember feeling sick after she said that, and it's always kind of stuck with me. Well, flash forward to last summer, my 5-year-old daughter and I are driving downtown Des Moines, and we're at a stoplight, and she sees a gentleman sitting on the ground, and she asked me almost verbatim the exact same question, "Mom, why is that guy sitting in the dirt? Why isn't he at home?" And my mom's words flashed in my head, nowhere to go, no one to help. And I realized in that moment that was not a good enough answer for me when I was a 5-year-old child, and it's not a good enough answer for me as a mother of a 5-year-old child. So I did explain the concept of homelessness to my daughter, but I told her, you're right, we should be helping. So that day, I looked into where I could make the biggest impact for our houseless neighbors, and the answer was City Council. So that's sort of my City Council origin story. I want to help our houseless neighbors first and foremost, but another motivation was I want my daughter to know that when we see people who have no one to help, we're the helpers, and we stand up.
This number one large issue the city's been facing for a number of years is population. A lot of times families are moving out of the city of Des Moines to the suburbs, or not moving from the suburbs to the city of Des Moines because taxes are high and the education system isn't as good as it is. The opportunities that exist for young kids are not as good as they are in Des Moines that exist outside of Des Moines in the suburbs. So what can the city of Des Moines do to help to retain the population in Des Moines without them leaving for the suburbs?
Yeah, I think that ties in really well to one of my main issues, which is our city budget is a mess. We need to completely reprioritize where our money is going. And one of the things that has really suffered and has been grossly defunded is our education system. We have buildings that are falling apart. We have students that can't learn in the environment or with the tools they're currently being supplied. We have teachers that are underpaid. So yeah, our school systems might not be as good, and that is in direct response to the priorities of our current and former city councils. If we were to take a hard, long look at the budget, we would find the money. And that could play into affordable housing as well. People are moving because Des Moines is unaffordable. If we could invest in programs or fix our zoning laws so they're not so exclusionary and they're more inclusionary, a lot of these problems would be solved.
Can you give me an example of where there is too much money going to a program that you think is overfunded in the city?
Well, it's not necessarily a program, but most, if not all, of our high-ranking officials in our city are making double, if not more, the national average for that position. Now, we live in a big city. in Iowa standards. So there's no reason our high officials shouldn't be making a percentage more than the Iowa national average. But that's not what's happening. We are essentially paying people more than double what they need to survive in our city, and it's bankrupting us.
You mentioned food insecurity, an issue that you faced as a young child. Now that I'm a mom, the idea of not being able to feed my kids is a devastating thought. Yeah. That is heart-wrenching. There are, more than 70% of kids in the city of Des Moines are on free and reduced lunch. Yeah. There is more than half of our city is food insecure. Yes. What can be done to fix that problem?
Well, I think, again, this is a budget issue. The city, if they prioritized it, could afford to make sure that free and reduced lunch just turns into free lunch. That, for all students, that ends the stigma.
Food deserts are also an issue. People don't have access to buying food for home. They're miles from a grocery store. What do you think is the answer to solving the food desert issue in the North Pocket, the East Pocket of Des Moines?
Yeah, I think our city council should be uplifting and supporting community like urban farms. Recently, they have agreed to end the lease of a couple different urban farms, and in some instances, those urban farms are where that community gets their local produce. So I think supporting programs like that and furthering those programs, there's no reason we couldn't have small community gardens at every library. Almost every single library has some sort of green space. You could have a program within the library where kids can come sign up and learn about biology and growing plants, and then maybe they get to take home some produce to their family when it's harvest time. Also supporting efforts like community fridges. The North Des Moines Community Fridge is currently being threatened with fines because of a zoning issue. And that zoning issue is that it's in the front of the yard. The shed is in the front of the yard and not like the side or the back. And that's the whole zoning law. To my understanding.
Well, and so the concern with that is that if you change the zoning law, then outside of every house on the street, you could have sheds.
Right.
Close to the street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just feel like that's another exclusionary zoning law that is sort of arbitrary. Like, what's wrong with having a shed close to the street? If I have to choose between having 10 sheds on my street and one of those is a community fridge, helping solve the food insecurity and food desert in my area, then yeah, I guess I live on a street with 10 sheds on it,
I'd like to move on and talk about BLM and the council.
Yeah. One of my favorite topics.
There was a social reckoning that started last year. Mm-hmm. There have been a number of demands from the BLM group, the protesters, and some of those demands were taken straight to the mayor of the city of Des Moines' front yard. Mm-hmm. And the mayor said, I hear you. Yes. There was a lot of back and forth as to whether the mayor was kowtowing to these protesters who had rioted.
But yes.
That was what people who didn't agree with what,
yes.
That was what they said.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the mayor said, I will ban racial profiling, and moved on to do that within the city, but did not pass some of the other asks of BLM. For example, the the Civilian Oversight Board within the police department, and a number of other issues. So talk to me first about your reaction to seeing that group of protesters, of course, taking over the city of Des Moines, but then also taking their demands straight to the mayor's front yard.
Yeah. Well, I would say it didn't start in the front yard. It didn't start with signs and chants. It started with concerned community members going through the right channels. I've spoken to a lot of those demonstrators, and they requested meetings with city council members that went ignored. If they were answered, they were met with empty promises of town halls that never happened. They tried to talk to the council member one-on-one, then they were shut down, so they brought it to the council, and then the council responded with that community input with harsher and harsher speaking restrictions, and now it's to a point where only 25 people are allowed in the room. They're being incredibly inaccessible, not only on a one-on-one level, but also the meetings. They're refusing to do a hybrid Zoom meeting, so persons who can't be there in person to speak on consent agenda items or whatever just are out of luck. They don't have a voice. So I think that all of that boiled over into, well, if I don't have a voice either way, I'm going to be louder.
So what's the solve?
I would say, in regards to the demonstrations happening at the council meetings, there are a number of ways you could go about it. First and foremost, be more accessible as a public servant. You're an elected official. I think they should be having town halls once a week to address various social issues. I think they should have office hours where they have to meet with members of the public. And in doing that, perhaps some of those members won't feel like they need to go to a public meeting to air their grievances. They feel like they're being heard one-on-one. And a step further, a solution would be, if you say you're going to do something as a public or as an elected official, do it. If you promise a group of people who cared enough to show up at your front door a list of things, the least you could do is try.
Do you believe that the city of Des Moines should defund the police?
Well, that's a hot topic right now, right? And it's easy to throw around hot button.
Well, it's not a hot button issue. There have been BLM members who have said to the city council members, I won't talk to you until you tell me you're going to defund the police. Right. So there's a stalemate.
Oh, no, for sure. And I didn't mean hot button issue. I meant like hot button term. Because all defunding the police really means is refunding the community. We are pumping a bunch of money, 39% of our city budget goes into the police department, and those are all reactionary programs, right? We need to take some of that money, take some of those resources, and put it into a program outside of the police department where we have trained professionals responding to mental health crisis calls, calls about our houseless neighbors who just need help, calls about addiction services. We could have social workers, EMTs, addiction specialists responding to these calls, and they do stuff like this all the time without brute force.
So would that be an expansion of the current crisis team, or how does that look?
I feel like you can't rebuild that community trust by putting more responsibility in the hands of the police.
The final topic, we are completely out of time, but I do
sorry.
want to make sure that we, no, we've been talking, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm so glad that you're here. But completely unrelated to anything BLM, but drinking water has been an issue in our city. And now there's consideration of using more wells, which is, we've always used wells, but they want to increase the use of wells. What do you think is the solve for having safe and clean drinking water in our city?
Okay. Wells are not a sustainable solution. That's my first thought. Secondly, I think this is more than just a Des Moines issue, right? I think it's a Polk County issue. It's an Iowa issue. So we need to come together as all the city councils in Polk County, and maybe even all the counties in Iowa, to stand up to those who have legislative sway and let them know that we're not okay with factory farms dumping into our rivers.
Brandi, in closing, what do you want the people of Des Moines to know about you?
I would like them to know about me that above all, I think compassion is what empowers communities. And my main issues that I would like to see solved in my hopeful term as city councilwoman would be, a great impact in the housing crisis and housing our houseless neighbors. Housing is a human right and everybody deserves it. It would be city council procedure and ethics reform. We need to be stricter with the ethics code. We need to make sure that the people in charge of our city are not doing so just to line their own pockets and the pockets of those they know. We need to make sure that our council members are accessible. We need to make sure that our council meetings are accessible. And I think budget reform. We need to reprioritize the budget of Des Moines. The social problems are there. The need for solutions is there. The council's priorities are not.